Adam Schiff stepped onto the platform, believing his elite education and polished rhetoric would easily dominate a rough ex-cop from Queens. Dan Bongino saw a habitual deceiver who had spent 3 years promoting the Russia falsehood while leaking secrets and demanding censorship of dissenters. Schiff had previously attacked him on CNN, labeling him a hazardous conspiracy theorist who deserved to be removed from all platforms entirely. That proved to be a massive error in judgment regarding his opponent. The events that followed would transform Schiff into the most ridiculed political figure across the entire internet. This clash had been developing for many months. Pressure accumulated with each media appearance where Schiff casually cited Bongino as a prime example of unchecked misinformation spreading. It began gradually with Schiff responding to inquiries about social media rules by claiming people like Dan Bongino necessitated stricter oversight. He argued for more content moderation and far more rigorous fact-checking protocols. Then the situation escalated significantly. Schiff appeared on CNN specifically to brand Bongino a conspiracy theorist whose podcast disseminated dangerous untruths. He visited MSNBC to imply that platforms hosting Bongino should rethink whether they wished to be complicit in spreading disinformation. He was explicitly demanding that Bongino be silenced and deplatformed and erased from public discourse completely. Bongino had replied on his show by systematically reviewing Schiff's own history of fabrications. The 3 years spent claiming possession of Trump-Russia collusion proof that never appeared was just the beginning. He highlighted the leaking of classified intelligence to sympathetic media organizations. The Hunter Biden laptop, which Schiff labeled Russian propaganda, turned out to be entirely authentic. The fabricated version of Trump's Ukraine telephone call that Schiff read into the congressional record was also highlighted. During every episode, Bongino would play clips of Schiff lying and contrast them with the truth that surfaced later. He asked how someone with that history could possibly label anyone else a purveyor of misinformation. Yet Schiff continued escalating, becoming more personal and vicious in his verbal assaults. He was not merely disagreeing with Bongino's analysis anymore. He was challenging his character and his integrity and his right to possess a platform at all. Eventually, someone with deep pockets and a flair for drama organized what they titled the Accountability Debate. Schiff and Bongino would meet face-to-face with a live audience in a neutral location. There would be no moderator present to protect either of them. It was just two men standing with their records exposed. Schiff accepted because he was fundamentally assured of his own intellectual dominance. He held prestigious degrees from Stanford and Harvard Law. He had served in Congress for more than 20 years. He had acted as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. He had conducted countless hearings and performed thousands of media interviews and prosecuted cases before entering politics. He knew how to portray himself as the mature adult in the room dealing with complicated matters. While his rivals traded in simple conspiracies, he believed Bongino was just another loud radio host who would crumble under pressure. What Schiff fundamentally failed to grasp was that Dan Bongino did not care about appearing sophisticated or measured. Bongino had been an NYPD detective who worked real cases on real streets. He had been a Secret Service agent who literally took a bullet intended for someone else during his protection detail. He had stood post ready to die to protect presidents he disagreed with politically. He had investigated legitimate crimes and actual criminals rather than political adversaries. Most crucially, Bongino had spent months compiling every lie Schiff had told and every leak he had orchestrated. For every instance he was caught fabricating or twisting the truth, Bongino had receipts, including videos and transcripts. He had congressional records and Inspector General reports. He possessed Schiff's own words that condemned him. and Bongino had absolutely no intention of being polite about it. The hall was filled with over 800 people divided roughly evenly between Bongino's crowd and Schiff's supporters. Working-class Americans and veterans and law enforcement personnel who never trusted Schiff sat opposite supporters who thought a Harvard lawyer would dismantle a podcaster. The atmosphere in the room was electric. People were not there for a nuanced policy discussion. They were present for a fight. Schiff emerged first, appearing every bit the polished congressman. His expensive suit fit perfectly. His hair was styled precisely. That slight smile suggested he was amused by lowering himself to this level, but was willing to do so for the public good. He waved to his section of the crowd and took his position at the podium, arranging his notes with careful precision. Bongino walked out 30 seconds later to a massive roar from his people. At 48 years old, with his Queen's accent and cop bearing, he wore a suit that fit well enough but was clearly not custom-made. He looked exactly like what he was, which is a street cop who made good. His entrance possessed none of Schiff's polish. He walked directly to his podium without waving or acknowledging the crowd beyond a quick nod. He immediately started shuffling through papers covered in highlighting and handwritten notes. He resembled a detective who had been up all night building a case and was ready to present it. The moderator attempted to set ground rules, but both men largely ignored him. This was not going to be a structured debate with timed responses and careful moderation. This was destined to be a brawl. Congressman Schiff, you have spent recent months attacking Mr. Bongino's credibility. Would you like to begin by explaining your concerns? Schiff deployed his smooth voice, which he had perfected over decades of television appearances. Thank you. I think it is important we address the spread of disinformation in our media ecosystem. Mr. Bongino has used his platform to spread conspiracy theories about various topics. Let me stop you right there. Bongino's voice cut through Schiff's measured cadence like a chainsaw. His Queen's accent was thick, and his delivery was rapid-fire, and his tone was already aggressive. You want to discuss conspiracy theories, so let us talk about your conspiracy theories. Let us discuss the biggest political hoax in American history that you pushed for 3 years. He pulled out a heavy folder and slammed it onto the podium. We are going to go through this point by point, Congressman, and you are going to answer for every lie. Schiff attempted to maintain his composure. I think if we could have a civil discussion, it would be better. You called for me to be deplatformed. You went on CNN and MSNBC calling me dangerous. You suggested I should not be allowed to have a podcast. So no, we are not doing civil. We are doing truth. Let us start. The moderator had completely lost control already. Bongino was not waiting for permission or following any format. He was prosecuting a case, and Adam Schiff was about to be the defendant. Bongino opened his folder and displayed a timeline that appeared on screens around the venue. It showed dates from March 2017 to March 2019, with quotes from Schiff, at each point being variations on the same theme. I have seen evidence of collusion. March 2017. Congressman, you went on Meet the Press. You said, quote, I can't go into specifics, but there is more than circumstantial evidence of collusion. Remember that. Schiff started to speak, but Bongino was already playing the video clip on the screens. Schiff's own voice 2 years ago confidently telling Chuck Todd that he had seen evidence. March 2017. Bongino repeated, You said that. Then April 2017, you went on CNN. You said it again. I have seen evidence that goes beyond circumstance. May 2017, MSNBC, same thing. June 2017, July, August, September. Every month, for 3 years, you went on television and told the American people you had evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Bongino's voice was getting louder and faster and more intense. You were the ranking member and then chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. You said you had seen the evidence. You had access to classified briefings. You told America over and over that you had proof Trump colluded with Russia. He pulled out the Mueller report, holding it up. March 2019. Mueller finishes his investigation. $30 million and 19 lawyers and 40 FBI agents and 2 years and hundreds of witnesses later. What did he find? Bongino opened to a marked page and read directly. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government. He looked up. No collusion. After you spent 3 years telling America you had evidence, Mueller spent $30 million and found nothing. Schiff tried to interrupt. The Mueller report actually documented. It documented no collusion. Bongino's voice rose to nearly a shout. You lied. For 3 years, you went on every network. You looked into cameras. You told the American people you had evidence and you were lying. He played a montage that had been prepared. Clip after clip of Schiff on different networks, on different dates, always sharing the same message. I have seen evidence more than circumstantial. I can't discuss classified information, but over and over, his own words, his own face, his own lies. Where was it, Bongino demanded? Where was this evidence you claimed to see? Mueller could not find it. 2 years of investigation could not find it because it did not exist. You lied to the American people for 3 years about the most serious allegation you can make, which is that a president was a traitor working with a foreign power. Schiff attempted his polished response. The Mueller report detailed extensive contacts between. Contacts are not collusion. Bongino shot back immediately. You said collusion. You said conspiracy. You said you had evidence. You did not say, well, there were some contacts, and we should investigate. You said you saw evidence of criminal conspiracy. Show us the evidence, Congressman. Where is it? The audience was completely silent, watching Schiff squirm under the barrage. He tried several different verbal escape routes, talking about the seriousness of Russian interference and counterintelligence concerns, but each time Bongino cut him off and brought him back to the central question, where was the evidence of collusion you claimed to have? Finally, Schiff tried a different defense. I think reasonable people can look at the same information and draw different conclusions. No, Bongino cut him off flatly. You did not say I think reasonable people might conclude. You said I have seen evidence. Direct quote. You claimed to have seen proof. Where was it? Or were you lying? He leaned forward on his podium with his intensity ratcheting up. You are calling me a conspiracy theorist. I am a former federal agent. I know what evidence looks like. You pushed the biggest conspiracy theory in modern American history. You lied about having evidence. You destroyed people's lives. Michael Flynn lost everything based on this hoax you perpetuated. Roger Stone and Carter Page saw their lives ruined. Bongino's voice got even more passionate with that Queen's accent getting thicker. And you have never apologized, never admitted you were wrong, never said I should not have claimed to have evidence I did not have. You just moved on to the next lie. And now you call me dangerous. That is rich, Congressman. Schiff tried one more time to regain control with his smooth politician voice. I think, if we look at the totality of the circumstances, Bongino was having none of it. The totality is you lied for 3 years to the American people about collusion that never existed. And you want to talk about my credibility? That is the most hypocritical thing I have ever heard. He shuffled his papers aggressively. But we are just getting started, because that is just lie number 1. 3 years of I have evidence of collusion followed by a Mueller report with no collusion. Never apologized. Never admitted he lied. Comment liar if you remember the Russia hoax. Bongino did not wait for Schiff to respond before launching his next attack. He pulled out a different folder, this one tabbed with different colored sticky notes. Let us talk about classified information, Congressman, because I know a little something about that. I was Secret Service. I protected President Obama. I had top secret clearance with SCI access. You know what happens if you leak classified information. He did not wait for an answer. You go to federal prison. That is what happens. If I had leaked what I knew about presidential movements, about security protocols, about anything I learned in my classified briefings, I would have been arrested, prosecuted, and sent to prison. That is the standard for everyone who handles classified information. Bongino looked directly at Schiff. Everyone except you, apparently. He opened the folder. Let us go through your greatest hits as the Intelligence Committee's biggest leaker. March 2017. You go into a classified briefing about Russia. 2 hours later, CNN has the story with details only someone in that room would know. Source says it is you. Schiff started to object, but Bongino rolled over him. April 2017, closed-door testimony from Sally Yates. Classified session. Next day, Washington Post has quotes from the testimony. Sources point to your office. May 2017, classified briefing on Flynn. Hours later, leaked to the press. June, July, August. Every month, classified sessions followed immediately by leaks to your favorite reporters. He pulled out a timeline showing the pattern. Classified meeting followed within hours by media report, over and over. The correlation was undeniable. You were the Intelligence Committee chairman. You had a responsibility to protect classified information. Instead, you weaponized it. You leaked selectively to shape narratives. You gave classified details to CNN and MSNBC to damage political opponents. Bongino's passion was building. I took an oath as Secret Service. I meant it. I protected information even when releasing it might have been politically convenient, because that is what integrity means. That is what honor means. He pointed at Schiff. You took that same oath, but you violated it repeatedly for political gain. For CNN hits you leaked and leaked and leaked, and you faced no consequences. Schiff attempted to defend himself with legal language about the difference between leaking and authorized disclosure, about committee prerogatives, about the public interest. Bongino cut through it all. Don't lawyer talk me. I was a federal agent. I know the rules. You do not get to selectively leak classified information just because it helps your narrative. That is not oversight. That is corruption. He pulled out specific examples. Flynn transcripts leaked. You were one of the few people who had access. They end up in the Washington Post. Testimony from Fusion GPS principals. Classified session leaked immediately, your fingerprints all over it. His voice got more intense. You know what really gets me? You leaked to damage Flynn Stone. Page Manafort, regular Americans who got destroyed by your leaks. But when Devin Nunes tried to expose FBI abuse when he wrote a memo based on classified information showing FISA court violations, you attacked him. You called it irresponsible, said he was endangering national security. Bongino was almost shouting now. So leaking to damage Republicans is fine, But exposing FBI corruption is dangerous. That is not principle. That is partisanship. You leak when it helps Democrats. You attack leaks when they hurt Democrats. You are a hypocrite. Schiff tried to regain composure with talk about protecting sources and methods. Sources and methods. Bongino's laugh was harsh. You leaked sources and methods constantly. You just leaked the ones that fit your narrative. Carter Page FISA warrant. You said it was all proper. Then we find out FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith altered evidence to get that warrant. The IG found 17 significant errors, but you defended it all, leaked to protect it because it served your agenda. He leaned forward again, voice dropping slightly, but no less intense. I was in law enforcement. We had rules. We did not leak evidence. We did not selectively release information to prejudice cases. We did not violate classified protocols for political advantage. You did all of that, and you never faced accountability. Final point delivered with maximum contempt. And now you want to lecture me about spreading misinformation. You leaked classified information for 3 years to spread the Russia hoax. You are a leaker and a liar, and you call me dangerous. Get out of here with that leaked classified info for years, violated oath, no consequences, now wants to silence truth-tellers. Share this. Bongino pulled out another folder, and this one made him visibly angry, just holding it. October 2020. Hunter Biden's laptop. New York Post has the story. The emails showing corruption, photos, evidence. And what did you do, Congressman? He played a video clip. Schiff on CNN. Clearly the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin. This is Russian disinformation, classic textbook, Soviet-style disinformation. Bongino's voice was shaking with rage. You called it Russian disinformation. You went on every network you could find. You said it was a Russian operation. You organized 51 intelligence officials to sign a letter saying it had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. You got Twitter to censor the New York Post. You got Facebook to suppress the story all 3 weeks before a presidential election. He slammed his hand on the podium. And it was real. The laptop was real. The FBI had it since December 2019. They knew it was real. The repair shop owner confirmed Hunter dropped it off. The emails have been verified. Even the New York Times and Washington Post now admit it is real. Bongino was pacing now, too agitated to stand still. You lied about Russian disinformation to interfere in an election. You censored a true story about Biden corruption. That is election interference. That is exactly what you accused Trump of doing. Schiff tried to defend himself by saying he could not have known it was authentic. Couldn't have known Bongino was incredulous. You were Intelligence Committee chairman. You could have asked the FBI. They had had it for 10 months. They knew it was real. Either you did ask and lied, or you did not ask and spoke anyway. Which is it, liar or incompetent? He pulled out polling data. Polls show that if voters had known about Hunter Biden's laptop enough, would have changed their vote to swing the election. You interfered in a presidential election by calling a true story Russian disinformation. You got it censored 3 weeks before voting. Bongino's voice rose to a shout. And you have never apologized. Never said I was wrong to call it Russian disinformation. Never admitted you helped censor a true story. You just moved on, because you never face consequences for lying. He pointed at Schiff accusingly. You organized 51 former intelligence officials. You knew that letter would be used to censor the story. You wanted it censored because it hurt Biden. So you lied, called it Russian disinformation, when you had no evidence. It was just like you had no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. You just lie, and the media repeats it. Schiff attempted to explain that the letter said it had hallmarks, not that it definitively was Russian disinformation. Hallmarks Bongino was having none of it. You went on CNN and said, "This is Russian disinformation, not might be or has hallmarks." You said it was direct quote, and every media outlet ran with it. Twitter censored the post. The largest newspaper in New York banned from Twitter for reporting a true story because you lied. His intensity reached a new peak. You know what kills me? You spent 3 years spreading actual disinformation about Trump-Russia collusion. Then when a real story about real Biden corruption comes out, you call it disinformation. You are like a guilty criminal calling the cops corrupt. It is projection. Everything you accuse others of you have done. Final assessment delivered with pure contempt. And you want to decide what is misinformation. You want me deplatformed. You have been wrong about everything. Everything you said was misinformation turned out to be true. Everything you said was true turned out to be lies. But you should be the arbiter of truth. That is insane. Called real laptop Russian disinformation. Got it censored. Interfered in election. Laptop was real. Never apologized. Comment if you remember. Bongino grabbed another folder. This one with yellow tabs all over it. First impeachment, Ukraine. You are the Intelligence Committee chairman. You are supposed to present facts. Instead, you read a fake version of Trump's phone call with Zelensky. You made it up in an official congressional hearing under oath. He played the video. Schiff, at the hearing, dramatically reading his parody version of the call that bore no resemblance to the actual transcript, making it sound like a mob shakedown. When it finished, Bongino just stared at Schiff in disbelief. What was that? In what universe is it appropriate for an Intelligence Committee chairman to fabricate a presidential phone call during an impeachment hearing? Schiff tried to explain it was satire that he had said it was the essence of the call. Satire, Bongino's voice hit a new level of incredulity. That is not Saturday Night Live. That is Congress. You are under oath. You are the Intelligence Committee chairman. You are presenting what is supposed to be evidence, and you made up a completely fake version of the call. He pulled out reactions from confused witnesses and representatives who thought Schiff was reading the actual call. People watching thought that was real. Your own colleagues asked if that was the actual transcript. You created confusion deliberately. That is fraud. Bongino's cop background came through. If I had done that as a detective, if I had fabricated evidence in court, I would have been fired and prosecuted. If a prosecutor made up fake evidence like you did, they would be disbarred. But you did it in Congress during an impeachment and faced zero consequences. He slammed the transcript on his podium. The real call transcript was already public. People could read it themselves. But you made up a fake version anyway. Why to prejudice the proceedings to make it sound worse than it was? That is deception. That is lying. Schiff tried to claim everyone knew it wasn't the real call. Everyone knew Bongino was apoplectic. Your media allies reported it like it was real. CNN ran clips without clarifying it was your made-up version. People absolutely thought that was what Trump said. You knew that would happen. You are a lawyer. You know exactly what you were doing. His voice dropped to angry intensity. This was an impeachment. You were trying to remove a sitting president, and you fabricated evidence. In any court in America, that would be grounds for sanctions, disbarment, prosecution. But in Congress, nothing. You faced no accountability. Final point. And this guy calls me a conspiracy theorist. You literally made up a conspiracy that didn't exist, fabricated evidence to support it. And I am the problem. The hypocrisy is staggering. Made-up fake version of presidential phone call in impeachment hearing, called it parody when caught. Faced no consequences. Share this fraud. Bongino moved to his next attack with visible anger. Carter Page, FISA warrants. You said they were all proper. You attacked Devin Nunes for exposing problems. You said the Nunes memo was partisan and misleading. Remember all that? Schiff notated it wearily. Nunes was right, Bongino shouted. Inspector General Horowitz found 17 significant errors and omissions in those visa applications. FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith pleaded guilty to altering an email to get the warrant. That is fraud. That is a crime. But you defended it all. He pulled out the IG report. Let me read you what Horowitz found. FBI used the Steele dossier political opposition research paid for by Hillary Clinton as evidence. They knew it was uncorroborated. They knew the primary source disavowed the information. They hid exculpatory evidence from the FISA court. They altered documents. They lied to federal judges. Bongino's intensity was building again, and you, as Intelligence Committee chairman, defended this. You said the process was proper. You attacked anyone who questioned it. You protected FBI officials who lied to courts. Schiff tried to defend the general FISA process while acknowledging some problems. Some problems, Bongino was incredulous. They altered evidence. They committed fraud on a federal court. They spied on an American citizen based on political opposition research. And you call that some problems. He pulled out Schiff's own words attacking the Nunes memo. You said releasing this memo would endanger national security. You said it was misleading. You fought its release. Then the IG report came out and proved Nunes was right about everything. Bongino's voice was shaking with rage. You are supposed to provide oversight of the FBI. Instead, you protected them. You attacked the whistleblowers. You defended the corrupt officials. You chose deep state over Constitution. Personal angle. I was in federal law enforcement. We did not lie to judges. We did not alter evidence. If we had, we would go to prison. But the FBI does it, and you defend them. That is corruption. That is covering up crimes. He leaned forward menacingly. And the worst part you knew. You had access to the same information Nunes had. You saw the FISA abuses, but you covered it up because it served your Russia collusion narrative. You protected FBI corruption to advance a political hoax. That is not oversight. That is complicity. FBI lied to courts, altered evidence spied on American. Schiff defended them, attacked whistleblowers, covered up crimes. Share this. Bongino's final prepared attack was the most personal. And now, after lying for years, after being wrong about everything, you want to censor people like me. His voice was incredulous and furious simultaneously. You call for me to be deplatformed. You pressure big tech to silence conservatives. You want to decide what is misinformation. He started counting on his fingers rapid fire. Russia collusion. You were wrong and lied. Hunter laptop. You were wrong and lied. FISA abuse. You were wrong and covered it up. Ukraine call. You fabricated it, but you should decide what is true. Schiff tried to respond with talk about protecting democracy from dangerous misinformation. Protecting democracy. Bongino cut him off by censoring speech. That is Orwellian. You lied for 3 years and faced no consequences, But you want me silenced for telling the truth, for exposing your lies." His voice rose to a shout. "I am a First Amendment absolutist. I protected the Constitution as Secret Service. Free speech means protecting speech you disagree with. But you want government deciding what people can say. That is tyranny." He pulled out quotes of Schiff, calling for deplatforming, for more content moderation, for fact-checking that always seemed to target conservatives. You define misinformation as anything that disagrees with your narrative. Hunter laptop. True, but you called it misinformation. Russia collusion. False. But you spread it for years. You have got it backwards. Everything you call misinformation turns out to be true. Everything you call true turns out to be lies. Bongino's final point was delivered with maximum passion. "I was a cop, a Secret Service agent. I defended the Constitution. I protected presidents I disagreed with, because that is what the job demands. Honor, integrity, truth. You have shown none of that. You lie. You leak. You fabricate. You cover up. And when people expose you, you call for them to be silenced. That is not protecting democracy. That is ending it. Lied about everything. Was wrong about everything. Now wants to censor truth-tellers. Comment tyrant if you see it." Bongino stood up from his podium too, worked up to sit anymore. He had been building toward this moment for the entire confrontation. "Let me summarize what we have established here, Congressman, because I think everyone watching needs to understand who Adam Schiff really is." He started pacing that Queen's energy fully unleashed. "For 3 years you told the American people you had evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. You went on every network. You looked into cameras. I have seen more than circumstantial evidence over and over and over. Then Mueller investigates. $30 million, 2 years, 40 FBI agents, 19 lawyers, and he finds nothing. No collusion, no conspiracy, no coordination. You lied for 3 years to the American people about the most serious allegation possible, and you have never apologized, never admitted you were wrong. You just moved to the next lie." He counted on his fingers as he continued, voice getting louder. "You leaked classified information repeatedly, for years violated your oath, compromised sensitive intelligence, all for CNN hits, all to damage political opponents. I was Secret Service. If I had done that, I would be in federal prison. But you, no consequences, just more media appearances." Third finger up. Hunter Biden, laptop. Real story, real evidence, real corruption. You called it Russian disinformation. You organized 51 intelligence officials to provide cover for your lie. You got it censored 3 weeks before a presidential election. That is election interference. That is exactly what you accused Trump of. And the laptop was real. FBI knew it. You either knew and lied, or spoke without knowing. Either way, disqualifying. Fourth finger. You fabricated a presidential phone call, made up quotes, made up dialogue, in an impeachment hearing under oath as Intelligence Committee Chairman. When caught, you called it parody. That is not parody. That is fraud. Any prosecutor who did that would be disbarred. You faced nothing. Fifth finger voice rising to a shout. FISA abuse. FBI lied to federal courts, altered evidence, committed fraud, spied on Americans based on political opposition research. You defended them, attacked the whistleblowers, protected corrupt officials, covered up crimes because it served your Russia hoax narrative. He held up his other hand. And now, Now you want to censor. You call for people like me to be deplatformed. You pressure big tech to silence conservatives. You want to decide what is misinformation. You, the guy who has been wrong about everything, the guy who has lied about everything. You should be the arbiter of truth. That is crazy. Bongino walked closer to Schiff's podium, his intensity at maximum. You called me a conspiracy theorist. You said I spread dangerous misinformation. You suggested I should be silenced. So let me tell you who I am versus who you are. His voice got emotional, that Queen's accent thick with passion. I grew up in Queen's working-class family. My mother worked at the post office. My father was a New York City union worker. We did not have connections. We did not have money. We had work ethic. I became an NYPD cop, walked a beat, investigated real crimes, dealt with real criminals, not political opponents. Criminals, he pointed at himself. Then I joined the Secret Service. You know what that means. That means I took an oath to protect the President of the United States with my life, and I meant it. I protected President Bush. I protected President Obama. I would have died for either of them. Not because I agreed with their policies. I disagreed with Obama on almost everything. But that does not matter. The oath matters. The Constitution matters. Country over party. His voice rose again. I stood post in the freezing cold. I worked 18-hour days. I missed my kids' birthdays. I missed holidays. Because that is what service means. Real service. Not the fake service you politicians talk about. Actually putting yourself in danger. Actually sacrificing. Actually meaning your oath. He pointed at Schiff. What have you sacrificed? You went to Stanford. You went to Harvard Law. You have been in Congress for 20 years. You have never had a real job. Never investigated a real crime. Never faced real danger. You have spent decades in Washington, playing games, lying, leaking, fabricating, covering up, all for political advantage, all for career. Bongino's voice was shaking with emotion. Now I protected President Obama, even though I thought his policies were destroying America. You know why? Because that is what honor demands. That is what integrity requires. That is what country over party means. But you have put party over country every single time. You have lied to damage Republicans. You have leaked to help Democrats. You have fabricated evidence in impeachment. You have covered up FBI corruption. Every decision driven by politics, not truth, not justice. Politics. He walked back toward his podium, but turned for his final assault. So when you call me a conspiracy theorist, when you call me dangerous, when you say I should be silenced, that tells me one thing. I am doing something right. Because if a lying, leaking, fabricating, covering-up politician like you does not like what I am saying, then I must be telling the truth. His final line was delivered with absolute conviction. You spent 3 years lying about Russia. You leaked classified information. You called a real laptop Russian disinformation. You fabricated a presidential phone call. You covered up FBI crimes. You called for Americans to be censored. And you have faced no consequences for any of it. But you call me dangerous. He shook his head in disgust. We are done here. You are a liar. You are a leaker. You are a fraud. And everyone watching knows it now. You attacked me thinking you would intimidate me. But I am a cop from Queens who protected presidents. I do not get intimidated, especially not by someone like you. Bongino picked up all his folders, turned his back on Schiff, and walked off the stage. The audience erupted, half of them standing and cheering, the other half sitting in shocked silence. Schiff sat at his podium, unable to respond, his smooth politician facade completely shattered. Everything Bongino had thrown at him was documented. Video clips of Schiff's own words. Mueller report findings, IG reports, Inspector General testimony, congressional records, all of it undeniable. Schiff had called Bongino a conspiracy theorist and demanded a debate. He had gotten his wish, and he had been destroyed by his own record. The video went viral within minutes. Someone had recorded the entire confrontation and uploaded it before Schiff even left the venue. Within 3 hours, it had 12 million views. Within 24 hours, 43 million. Within a week, it became one of the most watched political confrontations in Internet history at over 90 million views. What made it spread so explosively was not just Bongino's passion or the dramatic confrontation. It was that everything he had accused Schiff of was backed by evidence. The video clips of Schiff claiming to have evidence of collusion, followed by the Mueller report finding nothing. The timeline of classified meetings followed by leaks. The clip of Schiff calling the laptop Russian disinformation next to headlines from liberal outlets now admitting it was real. The footage of him fabricating the Trump phone call, all documented, all undeniable. Let me finish became an instant meme that moment when Bongino had cut off Schiff's attempts at smooth politician evasion. People made remixes of it, used it in response to politicians trying to dodge questions, applied it to any situation where someone needed to stop the BS and hear the truth. The phrase, "you lied," in Bongino's Queen's accent, became another viral moment. Clips of him shouting it at Schiff got millions of views on their own. People used it in response to politicians making claims that contradicted their previous statements. It became shorthand for calling out documented dishonesty. But perhaps most significantly, the confrontation created a template for holding politicians accountable that went beyond the typical left-right partisan divide. Bongino had not just disagreed with Schiff's policies. He had systematically documented Schiff's lies, presented video evidence of them, contrasted them with the truth that emerged later, and demanded accountability. That methodical approach resonated even with people who did not necessarily agree with Bongino's politics. Conservative media played the debate on endless loop, but they did so by focusing on the specific lies, rather than just celebrating their guy winning. Fox News ran segments where they fact-checked each of Bongino's claims and found them accurate. They brought on legal experts to discuss whether Schiff's leaking should result in prosecution. They interviewed former intelligence officials about the damage caused by selective leaking of classified information. The coverage was not just "Bongino owns Schiff." It was, "Look at this documented pattern of dishonesty." Liberal media tried to defend Schiff, but struggled because Bongino had been so thorough with evidence. CNN and MSNBC could not deny that Schiff had claimed to have evidence of collusion that Mueller never found. They could not deny that he had called the laptop Russian disinformation when it turned out to be real. They could not deny he had read a fabricated version of the Trump call. The best they could do was argue that Schiff had been operating in good faith, based on information available at the time. But that defense fell apart when confronted with the 3-year timeline of him making the same claims long after they should have known better. Some liberal commentators tried attacking Bongino's style, calling him bombastic and unprofessional. But those attacks backfired because the video showed Schiff trying to use smooth politician language to dodge accountability, while Bongino demanded direct answers. Most viewers found Bongino's passion more authentic than Schiff's polish, especially when Bongino's claims were backed by evidence. The impact on Schiff personally was devastating and immediate. Within 48 hours of the video going viral, his favorability ratings dropped 17 points nationally. More importantly, Democrats in competitive districts began openly distancing themselves from him. Members who had relied on Schiff's intelligence briefings during the Russia investigation started suggesting maybe he had been overly partisan in his assessments. Congressional colleagues who had backed his impeachment efforts grew quiet when asked if they still supported his conduct. Schiff tried to do damage control through friendly media interviews, but each appearance just generated more viral clips of him trying to defend indefensible positions. When asked directly if he still stood by his claims of having evidence of collusion, he would give lawyerly non-answers that made him look evasive. When asked about the Hunter Biden laptop, he would try to change subjects. When pressed on the fabricated phone call, he would insist it was clearly satire in a way that convinced nobody. 3 months after the debate, Schiff's committee chairmanship came under pressure from within his own party. Democrats facing tough re-election campaigns did not want to be associated with someone who had become a symbol of partisan dishonesty. Some openly suggested he should step down from the position. Others just stopped defending him when Republicans attacked. Bongino's platform exploded. His podcast downloads doubled within a month of the debate. His radio show expanded to new markets. Fox News increased his appearances. Publisher offered him a new book deal. Speaking fees went up significantly. But more than just his personal success, Bongino had proven something important: that politicians who lie can be held accountable if someone bothers to document their lies and confront them publicly with evidence. The Bongino method became a thing, compiling video evidence of politicians making claims, documenting when those claims turned out false, and presenting it systematically rather than just making accusations. Other conservative commentators started using the approach. Progressive commentators started doing it too, going after Republican politicians with documented contradictions. The debate had elevated the standard for political accountability in a way that transcended partisan lines. 6 months after the confrontation, Schiff announced he would not seek his committee chairmanship again. He framed it as wanting to focus on other priorities, but everyone understood the real message. Bongino had damaged his credibility so severely that even his own party did not want him in that position anymore. The video of him being unable to defend his 3 years of collusion, claims unable to explain his laptop, lies, unable to justify his phone call fabrication. It had become permanent record of his dishonesty that he could not escape. 1 year later, Schiff was still in Congress, but notably quieter. He avoided contentious media appearances. He stopped making bold claims about investigations. He seemed aware that if he made strong accusations, now someone would immediately compile video of all his previous accusations that turned out to be false. Bongino had created a permanent record of Schiff's dishonesty that would follow him for the rest of his political career. This was not a debate between political ideologies or policy preferences. This was a former cop with receipts confronting a career politician who had spent years lying and doing it with such thorough documentation that denial became impossible. Dan Bongino had prepared for this confrontation with the same intensity he had brought to protecting presidents. Comprehensive, detailed, leaving nothing to chance. Every accusation was backed by video evidence. Every claim of lying was supported by Schiff's own words, contrasted with the truth that emerged later. The Mueller Report. Inspector General reports congressional records, media reports from liberal outlets confirming the laptop. All of it organized, ready to present, impossible to dismiss. But preparation alone was not enough. What made the confrontation so powerful was Bongino's authentic passion, that working-class queen's intensity that came from genuinely believing that Schiff's lies had damaged the country. The emotion in his voice when talking about protecting Obama, despite disagreeing with him, was not performed. That was real conviction about what service means. The anger about FISA abuse was not manufactured. That was a former federal agent genuinely outraged by officials lying to courts. Adam Schiff had fundamentally misread his opponent. He had thought Bongino was just another talk radio loudmouth who could be out-sophisticated with Harvard credentials and congressional experience. He had thought his smooth politician routine would make him look measured and serious, while Bongino looked unhinged. He had thought calling Bongino a conspiracy theorist would put him on defensive. Instead, Bongino had turned every attack back on Schiff with documentation. Conspiracy theorist. You pushed the Russia hoax for 3 years. Dangerous. You leaked classified information. Misinformation. You called a real laptop Russian disinformation. Every accusation became a boomerang that hit Schiff harder than the original throw. The Secret Service background gave Bongino moral authority that Schiff could not match. When Bongino talked about protecting Obama with his life, despite political disagreement, it demonstrated a kind of integrity and commitment that Schiff's career simply could not compete with. When Bongino talked about what happens when law enforcement officers leak or fabricate evidence, he was speaking from actual experience that Schiff lacked. Most importantly, Bongino had proven something essential about political accountability in the modern media age. You cannot outsmooth the truth when someone has video evidence of you lying. Schiff's polished presentation style meant nothing when confronted with clips of his own words. His careful lawyer language could not dodge direct questions when someone refused to accept non-answers. His congressional credentials did not impress when compared to actually protecting presidents. The confrontation became a template that others started following. Document the lies present. The evidence, demand accountability. Do not accept evasion. It was simple but powerful. And it worked because Bongino had actually done the work of compiling years of evidence. If you think politicians should be held accountable for documented lies, share this story. If you believe a Secret Service agent who protected Obama has earned the right to call out dishonest Congressman comment liar in response to Schiff. If you think someone who claimed for 3 years to have evidence of collusion that Mueller could not find should face consequences, share this with everyone who remembers the Russia hoax. Because Dan Bongino proved that when you bring receipts, passion, and refusal to back down, even the smoothest politician cannot escape their own record.